I want to finish up with this part one by Swedish Jewfish. So we got to Casablanca's opening elite model management in 1972 with all this all-star talent, cementing his reputation as a top-tier agency. But in its first year, 2 of his top models were dead. The first, Paula Brinken, she mysteriously dove out a window in a drunken state the night after she told friends she'd been raped by a photographer. The next to die was Emmanuelle Dano, who became hooked on drugs soon after signing with Elite. According to Casablancas, she was out for a late-night drive with several male friends when they attempted to rape her, some friends, and fell out of a moving car while trying to fight off her attackers. He said she died instantly. The story raised quite a few eyebrows, in part because it was John Casablancas who discovered her body lying in her own bed. In both cases, there was little police investigation, despite the suspicious circumstances of these deaths, and the fact that the only explanation came from Casablancas. John Casablancas, a marketing genius, would somehow be able to use those high-profile tragedies as good publicity. His agency became the object of fascination, and stories of his models' exploits became legendary. People in the fashion industry, the media, and the public became obsessed with following their every move, and Casablancas learned the benefits of courting controversy and using media coverage as a marketing tool. In 1977, Casablancas moved his agency headquarters to New York and set about stealing as many Ford girls as he could from Ford models. That was like matronly model agency where a woman ran it, and she had curfews and purity contracts and stuff, for her models. But Ford struck back, hitting him with a lawsuit for unlawful business practices and beginning a long-running legal battle that would become known as the Model Wars. For Casablancas, this only solidified his resolve. He would not only take Ford's girls, he would make them successful beyond their wildest dreams, and he would become the #1 agency in the world. Playboys and wannabes, Casablancas and Trump in the 70s. Around this time, Donald Trump was working tirelessly to ingratiate himself into the Manhattan social scene with little success. That changed when he met the man who would become his mentor and closest advisor, Roy Cohn, the infamous lawyer who first gained notoriety as a red baiter during the McCarthy hearings. Trump met Cohn in 1973 at Le Club, a members-only East Side hangout. Trump was 27 and had just moved to Manhattan, but was still working in Brooklyn at one of his father's company offices. He was a nobody at the time, but he was able to strong-arm the owners of Le Club into a membership, something he did as a way to get to know older, connected, and powerful men like Roy Cohn. At the time, Trump and his father had been slapped with a lawsuit by the Department of Justice for racial discrimination, for refusing to rent out their real estate properties to black families. Trump knew his best shot at getting the feds to back down was to get a political fixer like Roy Cohn on his side. Cohn would eventually represent the Trumps in a countersuit against the DOJ, and ultimately a settlement would be reached. But that was just the beginning of Trump and Cohn's relationship. Though Cohn had ostensibly been retained by Donald to handle a single piece of litigation, Wayne Barrett, an investigative journalist for New York's Village Voice, would write in his 1992 book about the Trump family. He began in the mid-70s to assume the role in Donald's life far transcending that of a lawyer. He became Donald's mentor, his constant advisor on every significant aspect of his business and personal life. Through Cohn, Trump gained access to Manhattan's drug-fueled disco scene, of which Cohn was a fixture. Cohn would become the legal advisor to Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager, the owners of Studio 54, where Trump would spend much of the 70s. During this period, Trump engaged in such excessive promiscuity that he deemed it my second business, according to the author Michael Gross. During an interview with Gross for his pop culture anthology, My Generation, Trump reminisced on this time of his life. You had drugs, women, and booze all over the fucking place, he boasted. If I hadn't got married, who knows what would have happened. In any case, in case anyone missed his point, he would later clarify, I don't think anybody had more sex than I did. Sex was all over the fucking place. He would also describe the typical night at Studio 54. I would watch supermodels getting screwed, well-known supermodels getting screwed, on a bench in the middle of the room. There were like 7 of them, and each one was getting screwed by a different guy. Later, he would tell Howard Stern that his sexual exploits and their inherent risk of deadly disease were what he considered his personal Vietnam, opining that there was perhaps no more deadly weapon than the vagina. And such was the life that Donald Trump saw in the late 1970s. In a way, it was a life not all that dissimilar to Casablancas's, yet with two considerable differences. One, Casablancas was a self-made man who was naturally charming, attractive, and navigated the celebrity and social scene with ease. Donald Trump was not. In fact, Trump had a personality that most people in elite circles he wanted to belong to found off-putting. But perhaps the greatest difference between these two men was John Casablancas was famous and Trump was not. Nonetheless, Trump and Casablancas would cross paths at some point during the 70s, most likely through Roe Cohen, who was involved in the suit between Elite and Ford, and they would form a decades-long friendship and later a formal partnership that would end up influencing many of his future career choices and inform his style of interacting with the media. Casablancas' influence on Trump became obvious when reading about both men, and it portends quite a bit, but has been largely forgotten by history. As they approached the end of the 70s, the two men were on very different trajectories. Donald Trump met and started dating Czech model Ivana Zelníková, a woman who, despite his later claims that she was a supermodel, was in reality barely making a living posing in her bikini at trade shows at the time they met. Ivana and Trump would marry in 1978, and their first child, Donald Jr., would be born 8 months later. When Trump set about his life as a not particularly involved husband and father, John Casablancas became a staple of the New York gossip circuit, where his dalliances with the most beautiful women in the world were splashed across page 6 every week, and his high-class lifestyle became the stuff of legend. Casablancas, young, undeniably handsome, and increasingly wealthy, was no doubt the envy of many men at the time. Furthermore, he was untouchable. During his glory days, he would be accused of rape, murder, and everything in between, and it never seemed to affect him personally or professionally. This is a quote from Bad and Beautiful, Inside the Dazzling and Deadly World of Supermodels by Ian Halperin. Casablancas didn't care what the media said about him, just as long as they spelled his name right, said entertainment critic Thomas Mann. He knew how to play the media to a T and was a master at turning any publicity he got into dollars. The craziest part is he didn't have to spend a dime marketing himself. The press followed him wherever he went, and he became obsessed with every detail of his life. And while Trump entered his long period of reckless business deals and marital strife, Casablancas was becoming an international star, credited with creating the supermodel. With his stable of women, both ones he had poached from rival agencies, and a growing roster of mostly young teenage girls recruited by his team of less than reputable international talent scouts, he embraced his reputation for risk-taking and debauchery. After signing Cindy Crawford in 1988, he encouraged her to pose for Playboy magazine as a way to expand her brand. The ensuing publicity led to a job as host of the MTV show House of Style and her iconic Super Bowl ad for Pepsi. In 1995, she topped the Forbes list of the highest-paid models, earning $6.5 million. Their era of the supermodel had begun. Donald Trump, for his part, was becoming increasingly restless and reckless. Despite fathering 3 children and having a devoted wife, by all accounts, he didn't spend much time with any of them, preferring work and play to the routines of domestic life. In the 80s, he made at least 2 life-changing decisions: to step out on his wife publicly and to expand his negligible empire into Atlantic City casinos. He built Harrah's at Trump Plaza in 1984 and a partially completed building that became Trump Castle in 1985, a property that would be managed by his first wife, Ivana. He also scooped up the Taj Mahal in 1988, which at a cost of $1.1 billion made it the most expensive casino ever built at the time. Somewhere along the line, during this time period, Trump appears to have hardened and grown cynical. Despite all of his efforts, by most accounts, he was never really accepted by the Manhattan social crowd. No matter how many buildings he put his name on, or how many millions he was worth, he was still always seen as a bit of a joke. Over time, his resentment grew and simmered into anger, and his actions became increasingly fueled by his need to settle scores. According to the accounts of his business partner at Harrah's, he was not well suited for the gambling world and was nothing more than an off-puttingly rude presence on the casino floor, often becoming angry at the very high rollers who make such industries incredibly lucrative in the first place, and demanding they leave if they were too far ahead of the house in their betting. Trump became steeped in excess, making extravagant purchases across the fuselage, and yet he was so cheap that he refused to fly VIP clients, even those who were prepared to put up millions of dollars in bets, because he didn't want to waste the gas and was concerned over the prospect of them using his gold-plated toilets and introducing him to strange germs. Okay, I'm about to start the next part about his Atlantic City escapades. That'll be, I guess, part 3 here.